So I'm just going to say that you got to stop if you're one of those people that you see a study that shows that says what you think and backs up your point of view, and you haven't read the study, you've never heard of the journal, and you're like, yeah, look, this proves my point. Peer-reviewed study. See, I'm right. Don't do that. Like, really, do not do that, because that's awful. Because that means pretty much nothing. Now, you might be aware, you might not, that science, I guess that's such a vague term, but like the field of academic literature, I guess you can say, in some places more than others, is going through some kind of reproducibility crisis, where all these studies, I don't have exact numbers on hand, but a surprising number of studies cannot be reproduced. Like, a lot of this stuff, they'll put out stuff, and the methodology seems all right, and in some cases it's completely flawed, but in other cases it's all right, but these studies can be reproduced. And the thing is, that doesn't mean we should dismiss science, that doesn't mean we should dismiss the peer-reviewed process. It just means you have to take into account that when a study says something, you have to actually go through and read it, you have to see what it says, you have to, like, really process it and say, okay, is this a genuine study? Did they miss a few variables? That kind of thing. Because, like, if you're like most people, you just find a study that says what you think is true and you put it out there and you haven't actually read it. And that's how fake statistics get passed around. That's why the whole gender wage gap thing is still existing, because people just throw out statistics. It's like the whole, now because of the Kavanaugh stuff, there's like the false rape allegations statistics coming out about something like 2% of allegations are proven false. And from what I can tell, we cannot verify that number at all. Like, that was a number that somebody just came up with, and it's like that number you can pretty much toss out, because it's based on pretty much nothing. But what happens is, these people here, these three people, I know of the third guy, Peter Boghossian, I think is how you pronounce his name, Boghossian, but two other people as well, James A. Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, who I've never heard of those two, but they seem to have published academic papers in their own respective fields, and they've come together and they said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to take the top journals in the whole, like, cultural studies kind of thing. We're talking like gender studies and women's studies and the whole cultural academic area. What we're going to do is we're going to immerse ourselves in the literature. We're going to read all this stuff. We're going to read a ton of stuff until we think we understand it, till we can at least understand what makes a paper. And then they're going to basically say, they're going to take the literature, or they did, I should say. They're not going to. They did already. They took the literature and they tried to use it to justify absolutely insane things. They wrote papers on it. They sent in the papers to be published under a fake name, of course, a fake institute. And some of them got published, which I'm going to go through a few of these. They're absolutely hilarious. And what these people did is absolutely fantastic. Because I know certain areas, like I know Adam Ruins Everything, which I think is a good show, actually, did an episode on this where they just took the script for that episode and they sent it into some shoddy journal that has no credibility at all, and the journal published it. And they're like, clearly they didn't even read it. It was just a script for an episode. Like, they didn't actually read the thing they published. But what these guys did is they didn't just send them to any, like, shoddy journal. They looked up the most respected in the field, like some considered reliable sources, and they sent in papers there and got some of them published. And now, of course, I can't say I don't follow the gender studies stuff. I don't read into that literature as much as I probably should. At least just know the enemy type of thing when I say I should. But I'm just going to take it on their word that these journals are considered reliable. I've never heard of them because I don't immerse myself in this kind of literature. I stick to, for the most part, just economics and medicine. But this is just the front of the page. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm going to go right to down at the bottom where, again, I'll leave the link in the description. It's a very long thing, but I highly recommend you at least skim through the first part, which talks about why they did it. They basically had to call a halt to it early because one of their papers got a lot of attention. The media, the Wall Street Journal, I guess, was contacting them saying, "Can you verify the author?" Because remember, they made up the author. The journal contacted them saying, "We need to prove your identity," and they're like, "Well, we don't want to start lying to people. We don't want to start spreading around we don't want to start actually lying. So we're just going to come clean." So they had to call an end to the study early. But so, as far as I can tell, only about 3 or 4 papers actually got published. And they wrote a bunch more. They wrote loads more. But apparently a bunch of them were in the process and were, from their perspective, were likely to have gotten published. But they did this thing just to say, like, look, we can publish this stuff and people will take it seriously. That should show you how messed up this is. And obviously they wrote the stuff, like, intentionally aware that, like, we're not lying, but we're twisting the truth. We're using sophistry here. We are writing an article that is poorly written, that is using the data and twisting it to support our views, to support radical stuff, and we're submitting it in, and it got published. Some of them did. One of them actually was a feminist rewriting of a chapter from Mein Kampf. Like, if you don't know that's the book that was written by Hitler, by Adolf Hitler in prison, translates to My Struggle, and it got published. But I just want to go through a few of these, because these are things that you can see in the green there. Hopefully it's zoomed in enough. Status: accepted and published. This is the first one here. They called it Dog Park. Or this is the name of, like, the topic or the paper. The actual official name of the paper is Human Reactions to Rape Culture in Queer Performativity in Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon. This is by the fake person Helen Wilson, PhD, of the Portland Ungendering Research Initiative. Made up. They totally made it up. Recognized for excellence, expression of concern raised on it following journalistic interest, leading us to have to conclude the project early. So this was the paper that people started talking about it, like the I believe it was the Wall Street Journal and a few other sources were like, hey, like, this is not, like, we have to verify the author here. They started sending them emails, and it's like, yeah, it turns out they had to conclude the study because they didn't want to start lying. Because the whole thing is, like, when people start faking things, when people start, like, trying to fake things and say, like, oh, the enemy actually did this, like, they start trying to fake up things that the enemy believes, it's like, no, that's bad. Like, if you're having to fake things that the other side believes or did, then that's, like, then it clearly shows that you're trying to make the enemy look worse than they actually are. And it's the thing is, like, when it comes to, like, gender studies kind of things, they're so radical that you don't have to make up things. You can just say, look how nuts this is. Like, look at things they are actually saying that is not faked. Isn't that nuts? And obviously that's why they concluded the study, because they didn't want to pretend to be these people. What they did was they wrote studies, submitted them, and then everything else was legit. Like, the people read the papers and were like, hey, this looks like a good thing to publish. We think this is a good quality article. But I can't talk today. The thesis was that dog parks are rape condoning spaces and a place for rampant canine rape culture and systematic oppression against the oppressed dog, through which human attitudes to both problems can be measured. This provides insight into training men out of the sexual violence and bigotry to which they are prone. Purpose: to see if journals will accept arguments which should be clearly ludicrous and unethical if they provide an unfalsifiable way to perpetuate notions of toxic masculinity, heteronormativity, and implicit bias. So, obviously, they did not write these papers seriously. It was meant to be like a, let's use fake logic, like, let's use sophistry and not actual reason. Let's use some previous literature and see if we can twist things to support our views. And the paper thought this was worthy of publishing. And not only that did it get published, but they actually had reviewer comments here. This is published by, I guess, Gender, Place, and Culture. Again, like, if you're aware of this stuff, if you've read that journal, can you verify for me if it's legit or not? I'm just going to trust these three people to say that this is a well-respected journal within the field. But here's one comment. This is a wonderful paper, incredibly innovative, rich in analysis, and extremely well written and organized, given the incredibly diverse literature sets and theoretical questions brought into conversation. The author's development of the focus and contributions of the paper is particularly impressive. The fieldwork executed contributes immensely to the paper's contribution as an innovative and valuable piece of scholarship that will engage readers from a broad cross-section of disciplines and theoretical formations. I believe this intellectually and empirically exciting paper must be published and congratulate the author on the research done in the writing. I have no idea how I have no idea how actual reviews get written, and if this is, like, I don't know if this is, like, something that people just copy and paste, because they don't actually reference the thing at all. And again, I don't know if it's, like, normal to reference it or not. But yeah, some woman or man, or I'm going to assume it's a woman here, that reviewed this, said, yes, this was a fantastic piece of literature on rape culture in dog parks, and published it. Thank you for the opportunity to review a really interesting paper. I think it will make an important contribution to feminist animal geography with some minor revisions as described below. As you may know, GPC is in its 25th year of publication, and as part of honoring the occasion, GPC, that's the Gender, Place, and Culture journal, I'm going to assume, is going to publish 12 lead pieces over the 12 issues of 2018, and some even into 2019. We would like to publish your piece, Human Reactions to Rape Culture and Queer Performativity at Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon, in the 7th issue. It draws attention to so many themes from the past scholarship informing feminist geographies, and also shows how some of the work going on now can contribute to enlivening the discipline. In this sense, we think it is a good piece for the celebrations. I would like to have your permission to do so. This is from the editor of the journal. But yeah, so this is stuff that is like actually considered legit in the fields. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to go through a few more. Just through the ones that are at the very least accepted and published. Here's one. Fat Bodybuilding. Title, Who Are They to Judge? Overcoming Anthropometry. I've never even heard of that word before. And a Framework for Fat Bodybuilding by Richard Baldwin. Actually, weirdly enough, Richard Baldwin, PhD, a real person who gave us permission to use his scholarly identity for this project. Wow, good for you, dude. Thesis, that it is only oppressive cultural norms which make society regard the building of muscle rather than fat admirable, and that bodybuilding and activism on behalf of the fat could be benefited by including fat bodies displayed in non-competitive ways. Purpose, to see if journals will accept arguments which are ludicrous and positively dangerous to health if they support cultural constructivist arguments around body positivity and fat phobia. So there's all kinds of like jargon there for the field, but it's basically saying the purpose of the paper was to say, or the intent within the paper, that what the paper was arguing, was saying that, yeah, it's entirely society putting pressure and coming up with it, completely coming up out of nowhere, that this idea that like bodybuilding is a good thing and fat is somehow less valuable than muscle or somehow worse than muscle. And it's like, no, that's biology, that's genetics. Like, this is nuts. Select reviewer comments. The topic of this essay is certainly novel and addresses an issue relevant to a disenfranchised demographic. The essay addresses bodybuilding as a stigmatizing activity towards the fat body and presents fat bodybuilding as a way to disrupt the cultural space of traditional bodybuilding. Cultural space. And this was published in Fat Studies. Notice how this was published in Fat Studies, too. Like, Fat Studies, and they're talking about how, like, fat bodybuilding should be a thing, and how apparently the views of human beings towards obesity and being fat is somehow like socially constructed and not like biological. Which, yeah, as someone with a degree in health sciences, this upsets me so much. Like, oh my god. A fat body is a legitimately built body. Absolutely great. And you can even say, like, I am fat. Like, I'm not some person that's like, wow, fat people are horrible human beings. It's like, no, I'm a fat person, and it's like, this absolutely upsets me. Like, holy crap, to be able to say, like, if you're trying to defend me by saying that my body is somehow, like, healthy or legitimate or something, it's like, okay, I should probably lose some weight, and I am in the process of doing so, despite what this article says you should believe. It's just, oh my god. I've read this already, so I've read these things already, and they're still hilarious. Title, Going In Through the Back Door, Challenging Straight Male Homohysteria. I've never even heard that word before. And Transphobia Through Receptive Penetrative Sex Toy Use by another fictional person, M. Smith. This was accepted and published in Sexuality and Culture. Thesis, that it is suspicious that men rarely... It's suspicious. I can't even believe I'm actually reading this. Like, there's going to be a recording of me reading this, and I don't know if I want this, like, out in the world. that men rarely, that it is suspicious, so it's saying it's rather odd, that men rarely anally self-penetrate using sex toys, and that this is probably due to fear of being thought homosexual, homohysteria. I don't know if they made that up. It doesn't surprise me if that word actually exists, but I've never heard it before. And bigotry against trans people, transphobia. It combines these ideas into... I'm like crying laughing right now. It combines these ideas into a novel concept, trans hysteria, which was suggested by one of the paper's peer reviewers. Oh, so this was actually suggested by one of the reviewers. Oh my god, this isn't something they made up. Trans hysteria was suggested. Encouraging them to engage in receptive, penetrative anal eroticism will decrease transphobia and increase feminist values. Purpose, to see if journals... Oh my god, I'm crying laughing. To see if journals will accept ludicrous arguments if they support unfalsifiable claims that common and harmless sexual choices made by straight men are actually homophobic, transphobic, and anti-feminist. So, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I can't believe I'm actually reading this stuff. But you see what this is saying, that it's like, men don't like masturbate anally, therefore they're homophobic, transphobic, and anti-feminist. And this got published. So just for the record, like, this is something you should keep in mind. This is published in Sexuality and Culture. And again, like, you have to keep in mind that when when a journal or news outlet publishes something, it doesn't mean they endorse it. Like I was saying, it doesn't mean that they think this is correct or accurate. It doesn't mean that they fully endorse it and that they're like, yes, this is true. But what it means is that they read through this thing and they said, yes, this is legitimate enough. Like, this was at least a well-written article. I don't know if a notification went off, but it did. That was my recording. I'm so sorry. I gotta stop that. But it means that they're not endorsing it, but they are saying it is well-written. And considering these were written like to be sophistry, like this was not written. It's not like they intentionally wrote it poorly. They wrote it with false arguments. They wrote it to be sophistry. They published it. Selected comments. This article is an incredibly rich and exciting contribution to the study of sexuality and culture, and particularly the intersection between masculinity and anality. What kind of word is that? Oh my, anality. This kind of, I can't. I'm questioning. Freaking notifications. I'm so sorry. I'm questioning, like, how I ended up reading this stuff on camera, of all things. This contribution, to be certain, is important, timely, and worthy of publication. Worthy of publication, says Reviewer 1. Okay, apparently these next two are also from Reviewer 1. Sorry for so many questions. This paper is so rich and exciting. I'm just overwhelmed by so many new questions, which is a sign of a marvelous paper. Thank you for this exciting research. I enjoyed reading your paper, and I recommend publishing it after significant revisions. So at least this person says significant revisions. I don't know what they were, but dear God. Here's another one, accepted and published, titled Hooters. An ethnography of An ethnography of restaurant masculinity. Themes of objectification, sexual conquest, male control, and masculine toughness in a sexually objectifying restaurant. And this was published by the guy that, like, or not by the guy, but this guy let them use his name. In the journal Sex Roles, accepted and published. Thesis that men frequent restaurants like Hooters because they are nostalgic for patriarchal dominance and enjoy being able to order attractive women around. The environment that restaurants provide for facilitating this encourages men to identify sexual objectification and sexual conquest, along with masculine toughness and male dominance with authentic masculinity. The data are clearly nonsense, and conclusions drawn from it are unwarranted by it. One reviewer did raise concerns about the rigor of the data. So one person, good on you, whoever that was, said, yeah, this might not be reliable data. Purpose: to see if journals will publish papers that seek to problematize heterosexual men's attraction to women and will accept very shoddy qualitative methodology and ideologically motivated interpretations which support this. So this is basically an analysis of why men go to places like Hooters. And if you don't know why that is, like, like, I've never been to a Hooters, but I'm pretty sure I know, like, why men like Hooters. Like, it's because they like food and they also like boobs. it's the absolute state of these journals. Good on these three people are some of my favorite people. Now I have to look them up and see what else they've done, because this is hilarious. I only know Peter Boghossian, and I've only know of him, I should say, and I've only seen like 2 or 3 interviews with him but good on these people. The readers and I were positive about many aspects of the manuscript, and we believe that it could make important contribution to the field. Why? I'm going to skip a few of these. While the author clearly has a solid grasp of the relevant and scholarly works related to restaurants and male subcultures where traditional forms of masculinity are embraced and promoted, it is not presented in a way that is easy to follow and understand. So at least there is a bit of criticism there. But, dear. So, yeah. Oh, this is from the editor. Here we go. Following external review of the manuscript. This is from Men. They tried to send it into Men and Masculinities. Following external review of the manuscript, we've decided not to publish it. However, the material you write about is certainly interesting and will doubtless find a receptive audience in another publication. So, I mean, I'm sure that's stuff. I mean, I've had stuff. What just happened? I have no idea why. But basically, what I can tell, like from what I've seen, is that when someone like rejects a paper of yours, or because I've sent in not papers, but I've sent in articles that have gotten rejected, and generally they're like it's a good paper or it's a good article, but we can't find use for it right now, or we're busy or we're full, like I'm sorry, we can't take it at the moment. And it's like, that's fine. Like, they might just be saying that to be polite. So in that sense, it's like, hey, the paper the journal Men and Masculinities, I can't say it's a good journal because I've never read it. I can't say it's like reliable. I can't judge anything in it, but at the very least, they were good enough to reject this paper, the Men and Masculinities paper. So good on them, I guess. Like, there's a positive. There's a benefit that we can derive from this, and it is that the Men and Masculinities paper, at the very least, was smart enough to say, no, this is stupid. Okay, I don't know what happened here, so I'm going to refresh the page. But this is what, here we go, accepted. And that's all. I'm going to start going through these because I get the videos already pretty long, but I'm having a blast with this. Hoax on Hoaxes 2, or Ho-H2. Title: When the Joke is on You, a feminist perspective on how positionality influences satire. This was published in Hypatia, or I should say accepted in Hypatia, but was not published. So I'm not going to go through too many more of these because we already went through the ones that were published. Thesis: that academic hoaxes or other forms of satirical or ironic critique of social justice scholarship are unethical. The academic hoaxes or other forms of satirical critique of social justice scholarship are unethical, characterized by ignorance and rooted in a desire to preserve privilege. To see if journals will accept an argument that shuts down critiques of social justice scholarship as a lack of engagement and understanding, even if one engages fully and knowledgeably with the ideas to the extent of having a paper on them published in a leading academic journal. This paper is also to anticipate and show understanding of the feminist epistemological arguments against our project and demonstrate their high estimation in the field by having them accepted in the leading academic journal Feminist Philosophy. That is, to criticize our work that way, they have to cite us. So, yeah, this thing basically is just this thesis is a critique of what they're doing, which is hilarious. Moon Meetings, title: oh wow, accepted without any requested revisions or comments, published by the Journal of Poetry Therapy. This is by the fake name they use. Title: Moon Meetings and the Meaning of Sisterhood, a poetic portrayal of lived feminist spirituality. I've never understood actually, what was it even called? Poetry therapy. Like, what is that? No clear thesis, a rambling poetic monologue of a bitter, divorced feminist, much of which was produced by a teenage angst poetry generator who was by a robot. Much of which was produced by a robot. before being edited into something slightly more realistic, which is then interspersed with self-indulgent autoethnographical reflections on female sexuality and spirituality, written entirely in slightly under 6 hours. To see if journals will accept rambling nonsense if it is sufficiently pro-woman, implicitly anti-male, and thoroughly anti-reason for the purpose of foregoing alternative female ways of knowing. This was written entirely by James, who is male. Here's the one. Feminist Mein Kampf, titled Our Struggle, which is, Our Struggle is My Struggle, right there. Mein Kampf translates to My Struggle. Solidarity Feminism as an Intersectional Reply to Neoliberal and Choice Feminism by, more people they made up. Published in Affiliate, and it was accepted. Again, not published, but this is because they had to call it off early, so they're confident that this would be published. The thesis was that feminism, which foregrounds individual choice and responsibility and female agency and strength, can be countered by a feminism which unifies in solidarity around the victimhood of the most marginalized women in society. To see if we could find theory to make anything Grievance related, in this case, part of Chapter 12 of Volume 1 of Mein Kampf, with fashionable buzzwords switched in, acceptable to journals who mixed and matched fashionable arguments. So, wow. And the weird thing is, I always thought, like, maybe this is the case with actual, like, legitimate papers, but I always thought, like, you would check it for, you would probably run it through some kind of, like, Grammarly type, or whatever it's called, that checks for, plagiarism. They might be able to do that, and I'm surprised Mein Kampf wouldn't come up. And I'm surprised that, like, they didn't even try to verify the people. Like, I get, like, the one guy that used his name with his permission, like, that's a real person, but I'm surprised they didn't even try to at least Google search the organization, which is rather interesting. I'm not even going to read through these because it's been so much, unless I can find, here's a co-editor thing. I will read the co-editor ones. The reviews are supportive of the work and noted its potential to generate important dialogue for social workers and feminist scholars. Here we go. Title: Agency as an Elephant Test for Feminist Porn. Impacts on male explicit and implicit associations about women in society by immersive pornography consumption by Richard Baldwin. Okay, this is the first one that was that needed revised. So this is the last one I'll hit then. I forgot that this one was needed revised. Thesis: that feminist porn is good for improving explicit and implicit attitudes about women in society, while other porn is bad for this. The paper seeks to upset the female-friendly, female-degrading dichotomy in favor of feminist. Non-feminist is read according to perceptions of scene authenticity and female performer agency. I have no idea what, like, I can barely interpret all that stuff. The original hypothesis for this paper were two, one of which survived an initial request to rewrite the paper. The first, which survives, is that taking the Harvard Implicit Association Test on gender and science immediately before and after two-hour blocks of immersive pornography consumption can serve as a reliable metric for whether that pornography improves or damages attitudes about women in society. In all, it posited that 4 men watched 2,328 hours of hardcore pornography over the course of a year and took the same number of implicit association tests. Okay, but that's the one that, this is all in stuff that, like, see, this one looks like it was rejected 3 times. That I'm not really too concerned about those because they were rejected. But the ones that were actually accepted and published, that is very interesting. So we know right off the bat that these papers can be pretty much tossed out. Because it's like, I mean, if you see something by them, if you see a paper published by one of these journals, it doesn't mean it's false. But it means that if we were to like flip a coin, yeah, or if we were to not flip a coin, if we were to bet on it, yeah, it's false. But this is very important. This is something to keep in mind, that you have to read the studies, for one. Like, just because something sounds legitimate, just because something sounds official, just because the paper says something, like, you have to actually read the paper. You can't just jump to the conclusion and see what it says. And half the time, even when people cite stuff, papers, they even take what the paper's saying out of context. Like, Paul Krugman does that all the time with his sources. But I'll wrap it up here. This went on for a bit long. But as you can see, this is like, I read maybe 20% of this whole article here published by them. So I highly recommend you skim through this stuff if you want to read the whole thing. But there's all kinds of good stuff in here. I didn't read the whole thing, but I skimmed through about the first half up until about this point right here. But I'll copy it there, and I'll leave the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. This is pretty much just me laughing. Holy crap, some of these are hilarious. But yeah, like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. Spread these articles around. Tell all your feminist friends about this, because I love this. I love how it's just like, you know what? We're gonna prove that your articles are illegitimate by sending in our own articles, writing absolutely messed up stuff. But now I know that I can trust these three people because they understand the studies in this area so well. They understand like the ideology so well that they can write papers and they'll be accepted. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more if you haven't already. Subscribe. I just hit 100 subscribers. I'm at 102 at the time of this recording. It's the first big milestone. That's fantastic. Thank you all 102 people. Actually, one of them I think is my alt channel, which it was the very first subscriber. So all 101 of you people, thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. Like the fact that you're willing to subscribe to this channel. It's like, on one hand, what is wrong with you? Like, I'm just ranting about stuff, but no, I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching.